Hey guys, tonight we begin with something a little different. You've heard bedtime stories about dragons, kings, and shiny medieval knights, but forget about that Hollywood shimmer. Tonight, you're stepping barefoot into the dust of ancient Babylon, one of the loudest, brightest, strangest cities of the ancient world. Don't worry, you didn't time travel naked. You still have your modern brain, which means you're about to notice all the little things people back then thought were normal, and you will find utterly insane. Congratulations, you've just woken up in the shadow of the massive brick walls of Babylon, somewhere around 600 BCE. The good news? The city is alive, literally glowing with oil lamps that keep the darkness at bay. The bad news? You have no idea what's in the streets at night. Stray dogs, thieves, maybe a priest trying to rope you into a ritual you didn't sign up for. Either way, it's going to be an unforgettable night. You blink, your eyes adjusting to the dim flicker of hundreds of little clay lamps set along alleys and doorways. They don't shine like your LED desk lamp back home. These are fragile bowls filled with sesame oil, each with a wick that hisses faintly as it burns. Together, though, they turn Babylon into what looks like an ancient Times Square minus the billboards, plus a lot more smoke. The lamps sputter, the shadows stretch, and you realize something that no tourist guidebook prepared you for. Babylon does not sleep when the sun goes down. The first thing you hear is the hum, not the soft fan hum you use to drown out the world, but the collective sound of thousands of voices, donkeys braying, hammers striking, and music sneaking in from somewhere down the block. Unlike in medieval Europe, where darkness usually meant good luck, see you at sunrise if wolves don't eat you, Babylonians actually leaned into the night. Oil lamps made it possible to stay awake longer, and longer nights meant more markets, more drinking, more singing, and sometimes more trouble. You pull your blanket, if you can call the scratchy woven mat you found on the floor, a blanket off your shoulders and shuffle outside. Here's a fact. The city of Babylon, at its height, had walls so wide that chariots could ride on top of them. Imagine a fortress city where even the defences had rush hour traffic. Those same walls at night are studded with watchfires and patrols. The glow bleeds into the sky, mixing with the stars overhead. For a brief second, you get the sense you're standing in a place where human ambition has scraped against the heavens themselves. Historians still argue whether the city was as dazzling as the ancient writers boasted. Some describe the walls as gleaming with blue-glazed bricks. Others think that was propaganda, like a tourist brochure written by someone who never actually went there. Either way, from down here, with the lamps and the chatter and the smell of spiced bread drifting over from the stalls, you feel very, very small. Speaking of smells, let's talk about them. No, you can't just spray Febreze into 600 BCE. The air is thick with the clash of aromas. On one side, freshly baked barley bread from a street oven wafts toward you, warm and comforting. On the other, you get a not-so-pleasant whiff of stagnant canals that double as waste disposal. It's like living next to a bakery and a swamp at the same time. Add in the occasional whiff of incense drifting from a temple, and you've got yourself a scent cocktail that no candle company would ever sell. You shuffle down the alley, stepping carefully because, spoiler, ancient streets are not smooth asphalt. They're uneven, cobbled in some places, dirt in others, with mysterious puddles that you do not want to investigate. Every step feels like you're playing a game of don't touch the glowing spot. Except here, the glowing spots are just lamp oil spills waiting to trip you. The city's engineers did their best, but even they couldn't stop donkeys from treating the road like their personal bathroom. A quirky tidbit for you. Babylon was so proud of its water management that they built massive canals and irrigation systems. By day, these canals fed the fields. By night, they reflected the oil lamps, making the city shimmer like it was floating on liquid gold. Beautiful, yes. Hygienic? Not so much. Falling in one after dark meant either a smelly swim or a very short life expectancy. Still, you can't help but admit, it looks magical. You'd almost expect a Disney soundtrack to kick in, if only they had invented catchy mouse mascots by then. Now, you're not alone in this walk. Families, children, old men in linen robes, even dogs with collars wander through the torchlit maze of alleys. Night is social time here. Unlike your modern routine Netflix, maybe doom scrolling, then crashing on memory foam. Babylonians used darkness for connection. It's when neighbours gather, when lovers sneak glances, and when storytellers sharpen their tongues. The world feels looser at night. Of course, that also means pickpockets sharpen their hands, but you'll deal with that later. You pause at a crossroads where a vendor has set up a makeshift stall. He's selling dates, sticky, sweet, still clinging to bits of stem. You can't resist. You grab one, bite into it, and instantly regret not having a toothbrush. That's another fun fact. Babylonian dental care basically amounted to chew on twigs and hope for the best. Archaeologists have found skulls with enough cavities to make a dentist cry. You run your tongue over your own teeth and silently thank the universe for fluoride toothpaste. A group of children rush past you, laughing and chasing each other around the glow of a lamppost. One boy nearly barrels into your legs, but swerves at the last second, tossing an apology in Akkadian that you don't fully understand. Their energy reminds you that this is a city alive at every level. Not just kings and temples, but families, noise, ordinary human mess. And as you watch them disappear into the shadows, you realise something else. You don't feel sleepy at all. In fact, you feel wired, caught in the pulse of a city that refuses to shut its eyes. The hum of distant drums pulls you forward again. Somewhere in the maze of streets, music is starting. Maybe it's a tavern, maybe a temple, maybe just some bored teenagers hitting pots for fun. Historians still argue whether Babylon's nightlife was primarily religious or recreational. Was it all about worship, or was it just humans being humans, staying up too late, singing songs off-key? You suspect the truth is both. Humans rarely need just one reason to party. As you wander, the city opens wider. Towering in the distance is the ziggurat, that massive step pyramid dedicated to Marduk, Babylon's chief god. By day, it looks imposing. By night, with torches flaring on each tier, it looks like a stairway to the stars. People say priests climb it to get closer to the heavens, but from where you stand, you're thinking it looks like a nightmare Stairmaster challenge. Your modern knees wouldn't survive 5 minutes. Still, the sight pins you in place, or mixing with the awareness that someone here once thought, yeah, let's build a mountain out of bricks just because we can. And then, like every city ever, you spot the sketchy corner. A group of men loiters, speaking in low tones. One catches your eye, smirks, and gestures toward the darker end of the street. You decide, wisely, not to follow. Babylon may glow, but it also hides shadows, and shadows rarely offer discounts on snacks. You stick to the lamps, hugging the light like it's Wi-Fi in a dead zone. You're not ready to admit it yet, but Babylon is already working its charm on you. The night here isn't quiet, it isn't safe, but it is alive. A constant current of voices, smells, flickering lights, and promises of stories waiting just around the corner. And as you take one more cautious step into the lamplit street, you realize this is just the beginning of your Babylonian night. You step deeper into the maze of Babylonian streets, and now the lamps really start to hit you. Forget every romantic painting you've seen of the ancient world bathed in moonlight. No, what actually guides you here is fire.
Hello, guys.
Clay bowls balanced on doorsteps, mounted on little wooden poles or hung from iron hooks in walls. Every flicker tells you someone is awake. Every shadow sliding across the bricks reminds you this isn't a sleepy village. This is a metropolis. You're in a place that decided night was not for rest but for doubling down on life. The lamps themselves aren't fancy. No stained glass, no brass chandeliers, just clay, rough, baked, chipped in some spots, a pinch of sesame oil, a scrap of linen for a wick, and that's it. And yet, multiplied by thousands, they transform Babylon into something resembling a low-tech galaxy. You tilt your head, and the glows dotting the streets remind you of constellations. Only these constellations smell faintly of frying bread and donkey hair. Here's the fact that makes you blink. Babylon was big on illumination compared to many ancient cities. Archaeologists have found evidence of extensive lamp use not only in homes but also in public areas, alleyways, temple courtyards, even market stalls that ran long after sundown. For a civilization that didn't exactly have cheap electricity bills to worry about, they invested heavily in the simple technology of flame. And it paid off. Babylon became a city that glowed literally, while other places would have been pitch black after sunset. Now, of course, lamps mean oil, and oil means agriculture, trade, and people constantly grumbling about prices. You, standing here in your borrowed linen tunic, have no cash to your name, so you just get to watch. A man haggles over a jug of sesame oil, his voice rising until it sounds less like negotiation and more like a marriage breaking down in public. The seller, unimpressed, holds his ground. Sesame oil, after all, was not just for lamps, it was cooking oil, perfume base, even a medicinal rub. Running out meant stumbling through the streets in the dark, or worse, not being able to fry your fish. Imagine your local supermarket suddenly tripling the price of olive oil. That's the level of drama you're witnessing. Quirky tidbit: Babylonians occasionally used fish oil for lamps too. Yes, you heard right, fish oil, meaning that some corners of the city probably smelled less like cosy campfire and more like what died in the river. You wrinkle your nose just thinking about it. The sesame lamps give off a soft, nutty fragrance, but the fishy ones, not so much. Suddenly, you're grateful to be walking past the sesame oil district. You keep moving, and the streets unfold like a dream. Some houses have 2 or 3 lamps burning at once, a little flex of wealth like the ancient equivalent of leaving your Christmas lights on all year just to show the neighbours you can afford the electricity bill. Others barely manage one dim flame, a struggling wick bobbing in its bowl like it's one sigh away from giving up. The contrast between brightness and shadow is striking. In one moment you're blinded by a row of shining doorways, in the next you're stumbling into a near pitch-black alley where even the rats seem hesitant to scurry. Historians still argue about how well lit the entire city truly was. Some think Babylon was basically the Las Vegas Strip of its day, a dazzling wonder where lamps lined the processional way and temple courtyards shone like miniature suns. Others argue that most ordinary streets were dim, and only elite or sacred areas got the real glow treatment. Archaeology gives us broken shards of lamps, yes, but not the actual scale of light. So here you are, squinting in 600 BCE, trying to figure out whether this is the deluxe tourist part of town, or just the average nightly grind. As you wander, you notice how the light changes the vibe of everything. That cracked brick wall with ivy clinging to it. In daylight it's just boring. At night, lit by an oil flame, it looks mysterious, like a portal to a story waiting to unfold. The temple columns you passed earlier? By day, imposing, but manageable. At night, when their shadows stretch across the street, they look like sleeping giants watching over you. Even the stray dogs slinking past take on an otherworldly quality, their eyes flashing gold whenever they pass through a beam of lamplight. One lamp catches your attention because it's not sitting on a doorstep, it's being carried. A man with a thin beard walks past, holding a lantern, basically a lamp enclosed in a clay shell with slits to let the light out. He moves with purpose, the glow bouncing off his robe as he disappears down a side alley. Portable light, you realise, is a luxury in this world. No flashlights, no phone screens, no streetlights automatically clicking on. If you want to move around after dark, you either memorise the maze by touch or you carry your little piece of fire with you. And if the wind blows, good luck. Here's something you didn't expect. Lamps were also symbols. In Babylonian ritual texts, light represented purity, divine presence, even truth. Temples kept lamps burning constantly to honour the gods like Marduk and Ishtar. Imagine walking into a sacred courtyard at midnight, rows of flames shimmering, priests chanting. The practical merges with the spiritual. The city not only glows for people, but supposedly glows for gods too. You stop for a second, feeling the weight of that thought. Every flicker you see might be more than just practical lighting. It might be a prayer in flame. But here's where your modern brain interrupts. As moving as that is, you can't help but notice the smoke. Lamps belch tiny streams of soot into the air, staining walls black and leaving ceilings grimy. Whole families sit together in rooms hazy with lamp smoke, the ancient equivalent of chain smoking indoors. No ventilation systems, no HEPA filters, just constant inhaling of burnt sesame oil fumes. You cough quietly and step back outside, reminding yourself, romantic glow. For them probably also meant chronic lung problems. Another little oddity, Babylonians were picky about lamp designs. Some had flat saucers with wicks sticking out the side. Others were deeper, with spouts like tiny teapots. Archaeologists have even found decorated lamps etched with patterns or symbols. So even their light sources doubled as art pieces, little clay canvases. You imagine someone back then arguing, "No dear, I don't want the plain lamp, I want the one with the bird carving, it looks nicer on the shelf." Consumer culture never really dies, it just changes shape. As you pause by another row of glowing doorways, you notice something eerie. The lamps cast shadows that shift and dance, making ordinary figures seem alive. A hanging jug looks like a crouching man. A pile of reeds looks like a sleeping animal. For a second, you wonder if the myths of Babylon demons, spirits, gods lurking in dark corners weren't helped along by the tricks of firelight. Imagine being a tired farmer, stumbling home after 3 bowls of beer, and suddenly the shadow of a donkey looks like a monster. Boom, demon sighting, and so legends are born. Historians still argue whether Babylonians truly feared their knights or embraced them. On one hand, the constant lighting suggested determination to push back darkness, maybe even a paranoia of what lurked in the unlit corners. On the other, the vibrancy of markets and taverns proves they loved the night, claimed it as their own. The truth? Probably both. Humans are contradictory like that. We fear the dark, but also throw the best parties in it. You move along, eyes half closed, letting the rhythm of the lamps hypnotize you. Step, flicker, step, flicker. There's almost an ASMR quality to it, like the city itself is whispering, "Don't sleep yet, there's still more to see." And it's true, you're barely scratching the surface. Behind every glowing doorway, there are families talking, lovers whispering, priests chanting, and merchants counting coins. Light isn't just about seeing, it's about extending the day, stealing hours from the gods, squeezing more life into the dark. You stop one last time under a particularly bright cluster of lamps, and it strikes you, this city never intended to rest quietly. Babylon's nights are as engineered as its days, fueled by oil, by fire, by people unwilling to vanish into silence. And as you stand there, wrapped in the glow of clay and flame, you realize you're in one of history's first true 24-hour cities. You turn a corner, and suddenly Babylon feels alive in a whole new way. Forget the quiet glow of oil lamps you just left behind here. The night hums. Voices overlap like an orchestra tuning before a concert. Donkeys bray, merchants shout, children weave through the crowd chasing after fallen figs. Welcome to the heart of Babylon's evening economy, the night market. You thought the modern idea of a night bazaar was a tourist gimmick in Bangkok? Nope. Babylonians were already running theirs while most of the world was fumbling with flint in the dark. Why waste precious daylight on shopping when you can let the sun set, light 1,000 clay lamps and keep the money flowing? The first thing you notice is the smell. Oh, the smell. If you had Instagram, you'd be fumbling for your phone right now. Sweet dates piled high in baskets, fried riverfish sizzling in oil, hunks of roasted lamb sending smoke spirals into the air. And cutting through all that deliciousness? Donkey dung. Always donkey dung. Babylon keeps you humble. A merchant waves you over to a stall overflowing with fabrics. Brightly dyed wool, imported linens, even the occasional strip of silk. Because yes, Silk Road traffic was already trickling into Mesopotamia by this time. He runs the fabric across his arm like he's auditioning for the role of world's first influencer. And you almost believe him when he swears this shade of indigo will make you irresistible. You don't buy it, mostly because you have no shekels in your pocket. The crowd is its own spectacle. Farmers who've hauled their grain into the city shuffle beside soldiers off duty, their bronze helmets gleaming faintly in the lamplight. Housewives bargain hard, voices sharp as knives, while scribes linger with tablets tucked under their arms, calculating prices in their heads. Foreign traders in strange cloaks shout in broken Akkadian, trying to unload ivory or tin from lands you've only ever seen on maps. The air is thick with commerce, gossip, and the occasional chicken feather. And here's where things get interesting. These markets didn't just sell food and clothes, they sold everything. Perfumes, spices, tools, religious amulets to ward off demons, love potions that probably tasted like mud but promised eternal devotion. even second-hand goods. That's right, ancient Babylonians were thrifting way before it was cool. Quirky tidbit, receipts existed here. That's not a joke. Babylonian scribes kept clay tablets recording transactions complete with names, dates and items purchased. Imagine going to the market for dates and beer, and instead of a crumpled paper slip, you walk away with a chunk of clay that says 2 jugs of beer, 1 basket of dates paid in full. Try shoving that in your wallet. As you drift deeper into the market, the rhythm of haggling starts to lull you. Every conversation follows the same dance. Merchant, this jug of sesame oil is worth 3 shekels, no less. Customer, 3, my goat is worth 3. 2 shekels, final. Merchant, may Marduk strike me down if I sell for less than 2.5. Customer, done. You smile, realizing humanity has not changed in 4,000 years. Bargaining is eternal. Historians still argue how late these markets stayed open. Some think they wound down around midnight. Others claim certain stalls went all night if business was good. Judging by the energy around you, it feels like this could go until dawn. Oil lamps burn steadily. Musicians pluck lyres in the corner. Children fight sleep by nibbling figs. It's less market and more block party where you can also buy a goat. Speaking of goats, you nearly trip over one. Yes, livestock was part of the evening vibe too. Chickens in baskets, goats tied to posts, cows mooing indignantly while their owners tried to sell them off. For Babylonians, animals weren't just dinner, they were currency. You could literally trade a goat for a few jugs of beer, though the bartering process probably involved more yelling than your average modern credit card swipe. And then there's the entertainment. Imagine if your local Walmart hired live performers. That's what Babylonian markets felt like. Street musicians played reed flutes, drummers kept the beat, and dancers whirled through the crowd to attract customers. Storytellers set up shop near fire pits, weaving epics about Gilgamesh or tales of distant lands. You realize quickly, the market wasn't just about buying things. It was where news spread, rumors grew, and the city bonded. Here's a quirky fact. Sometimes these markets doubled as dating spots. Yes, Babylonian singles mingled between stalls of lentils and onions, making eyes over pomegranates. A good bargain on chickpeas might just lead to a lifelong partnership. And let's be honest, hey, want to split a basket of figs? Is way smoother than most modern pickup lines. But let's not romanticize too much. Not everyone here is having a good time. You pass by a hunched old woman clutching a tiny bag of grain, her eyes darting nervously as though someone might steal it. In another corner, children pick scraps off the ground, licking oil from discarded skewers. The market is vibrant, yes, but also brutal, a place where wealth and poverty brush shoulders in the same lamplit alleys. You pause to watch a group of scribes in heated debate. They're not arguing about prices, they're arguing about taxes. Turns out, even 2,600 years ago, people hated paying the government. These men are calculating how much barley is owed to the temple versus the palace, muttering curses under their breath. The words unfair and corruption may not exist in Akkadian exactly the way you know them, but the sentiment is crystal clear. One stall catches your eye, medicine. A man in a long robe lines up jars filled with mysterious powders and dried herbs. He promises cures for everything from headaches to infertility. One jar, he swears, will even banish evil spirits from your home. You lean closer, and the smell of sulphur nearly knocks you back. You don't buy it, partly because you're skeptical, partly because you'd rather not smell like rotten eggs for the rest of the night. Historians still argue about how organized these markets were. Some evidence suggests strict layouts, with vendors grouped by type. Grain sellers here, butchers there, beer sellers in their own lane. Others think it was more chaotic, a jumble of stalls wherever people could fit. From where you're standing, it looks like both order in the main streets, chaos in the side alleys. And honestly, that feels right. Humans love to plan, and humans love to ignore plans. As you wander, a boy offers you a skewer of grilled fish. He presses it into your hand before you can refuse, then grins when you try it. Salty, smoky, with a squeeze of sour pomegranate juice on top. You nod appreciatively, and he beams before darting off into the crowd. For a brief moment, you forget you're thousands of years away from your own time. You're just another hungry traveller in Babylon savouring street food under flickering lamps. But then a voice rises above the rest, a crier, announcing temple news. Tonight, he declares, there will be a procession for Ishtar. People clap, cheer, some roll their eyes because it means roads will be blocked. You laugh quietly. Some things never change. Festivals always mess up traffic. The deeper you go, the louder it gets. Drums pound, flutes wail, coins jingle. A merchant argues furiously with a foreign trader, each misunderstanding the other's words, but somehow both convinced they're winning. A donkey kicks over a basket of onions, children squeal and scramble, and through it all the lamps keep burning, steady as heartbeat. At last you reach the far end of the market, where things quiet slightly. Here, the stalls thin out, the crowd disperses, and the air smells less like roasted lamb and more like damp earth. You glance back, and the view is breathtaking, a glowing hive of humanity, shimmering against the night. You realise now why Babylon's markets mattered. They weren't just about commerce, they were about community, survival, spectacle. They were the city's living room, its social media feed, its gossip mill, its shopping mall, all rolled into one. And for all their chaos, they kept the city alive long after the sun dipped below the horizon. You take one last deep breath of spiced air, the echo of drums fading behind you, and move on. Because in Babylon, the night is far from over. If the night market was Babylon's shopping mall, the tavern was its after-party. You push past the last of the spice stalls, dodge a runaway goat, and suddenly you're hit with a new smell entirely. Malt, yeast, and humanity packed too close together. Welcome to the Babylonian Shikaru House, what modern archaeologists politely call a beer tavern, and what everyone else just calls where the real fun starts. Here's the thing. Babylonians loved beer. Not liked. Not enjoyed casually on weekends. Loved. They drank it for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and all the in-betweens. If Starbucks had existed in 600 BCE, it would have been replaced by beer counters. Forget frappuccinos. Imagine a caramel-drenched barley brew served in a clay mug with a straw. Because yes, they use straws. Reusable, eco-friendly straws made of reed, long before Instagram made it trendy. Step inside the tavern, and you're immediately swallowed by sound. Wooden benches scrape against clay floors. Laughter erupts in waves. Somewhere in the back, someone is already arguing loudly about taxes, while another table bursts into song, badly off-key but enthusiastic. The air is thick with smoke from oil lamps and the sweet tang of freshly brewed beer. Now, don't picture modern beer with a crisp golden colour and a foamy head. Babylonian beer was chunky. Think oatmeal meets kombucha meets a questionable smoothie. The barley mash often floated in the liquid, so people sipped through straws to avoid chewing their drink like soup. But here's the kicker. It was delicious to them, and it kept them hydrated when water supplies weren't exactly pristine. Call it ancient Gatorade. You slide onto a bench, and before you can even ask, a tavern keeper plunks down a jug. The liquid inside is dark, cloudy, bubbling faintly. You hesitate, but the crowd around you is already chugging theirs with gusto, so you join in. The taste. Malty, sour, earthy like beer's weird uncle who's lived in the desert too long but still throws great parties. The tavern itself is a curious place in Babylonian society. It wasn't just for drinking, it was a melting pot. Farmers, soldiers, scribes, merchants, even women who ran their own businesses gathered here. In fact, many taverns were run by women. Clay tablets mentioned Sabbatu female tavern keepers, who not only brewed and sold beer but also managed finances and kept rowdy customers in check. Basically, ancient Babylonians invented the concept of a boss lady bartender. And yes, taverns were where gossip thrived. Forget Twitter. The beer house was the true platform for trending topics. Want to know which official skimmed a little too much silver from temple coffers? Or which nobleman was sneaking around with a priestess? Order a second jug and sit near the loudest group. You'll get the headlines by the time you finish. But not everything here is rosy. These taverns had a bit of a reputation. Hammurabi's Code, the famous set of laws from around 1750 BCE, had multiple rules about taverns. Some were about keeping them honest. If a tavern keeper waters down beer, they get punished. Others were about crime. If conspirators meet in a tavern and aren't reported, the tavern keeper is in trouble. Which basically means, yes, taverns were fun, but they were also hotbeds of scheming, brawling, and the occasional coup plot. So, not unlike your average Friday night pub crawl. At one table you notice a group of soldiers, bronze helmets stacked in a pile, mugs clinking as they toast. They're half laughing, half shouting, their conversation veering between bragging about battlefield exploits and complaining about lousy pay. The one thing they agree on? Another round? Always another round. At the next table, a pair of scribes lean over clay tablets, scratching symbols into wet clay while sipping beer. You'd think they're working, but no, they're playing a drinking game. Yes, ancient Mesopotamians had drinking games. Some involved dice, others involved riddles. Get the answer wrong? Take a sip. Too many sips. Pass out face first into your tablet, leaving behind the world's first drunk doodles. The music here is relentless. A reed flute player wanders between tables, filling the smoky air with sharp notes, while a drummer keeps a steady beat. A dancer sways in the corner, her movements half ritual, half pure entertainment. Coins jingle as a patron tosses one at her feet, though it's probably barley tokens rather than shiny silver. In Babylon, the economy often ran on grain. Imagine paying for your beer in handfuls of wheat. It's both absurd and practical. The longer you sit, the stranger things get. A merchant stands up on a table, swaying dangerously as he delivers what sounds like a passionate speech about trade routes. The crowd claps and boos in equal measure, not because they care, but because drunk speeches are always entertaining. Meanwhile, in a shadowy corner, two cloaked figures whisper intensely, hands moving over a small tablet. A business deal? A conspiracy? Or just two guys arguing about the best way to brew beer? Hard to say. Here's a fun historical twist. Taverns were sometimes seen as dangerous for women, not because they ran them, but because they frequented them. Some texts imply that respectable women weren't supposed to linger in taverns, while others suggest the lines blurred in practice, which basically means Babylon had the same debates as modern societies. Who belongs in nightlife spaces, and who gets side-eyed for being there? Spoiler, women kept showing up anyway. You notice the tavern keeper again, barking orders, balancing jugs on her hip, counting barley tokens with astonishing speed. She yells at a drunk soldier to sit down, tosses a rag at a scribe who spilled his drink, and somehow still remembers to smile at new customers. This woman isn't just running a business, she's managing chaos incarnate, and she does it with the kind of energy modern bar managers would kill for. Time blurs in the tavern. The lamps dim slightly as oil burns low, but the noise doesn't falter. Patrons sing louder to compensate. Someone starts clapping in rhythm, others join in, and suddenly the whole room is chanting a drinking song you don't understand, but somehow feel in your bones. It's messy, it's sweaty, it's joyful. And yet, beneath the laughter, you sense the darker edges. In one corner, a man slumps forward, alone, staring into his mug. His robe is tattered, his eyes distant. For him, the tavern isn't celebration, it's escape. Another group argues fiercely, their voices rising, fists slamming tables. You remember Hammurabi's warnings. Taverns were breeding grounds for trouble. Still, the pull of the place is undeniable. The beer flows, the music swells, and the room vibrates with human energy. This is nightlife distilled to its core, the need to gather, to drink, to laugh, to forget the weight of the day. It's both universal and deeply specific to this city, this time. As you finally stand to leave, the tavern keeper gives you a nod. Maybe it's respect, maybe it's just habit. Either way, you step back into the cool Babylonian night, ears still ringing, head buzzing slightly from the barley brew. Behind you, the tavern roars on, unbothered by your exit. The night is still young, and Babylon still has stories to tell. The tavern fades behind you, its laughter and singing dissolving into the night air. The streets of Babylon funnel you forward, past rows of clay brick houses and shadowy alleys, until you emerge into a massive open courtyard blazing with light. Welcome to the temple after dark, where the gods don't sleep and neither apparently do their followers. The first thing you notice is the lamps. Hundreds of them, oil-fed flames flicker along the walls, casting golden halos against baked brick columns, while larger braziers roar in the corners. The courtyard is alive with glow and artificial day carved into the night. For a city where most homes are lit by a single lamp at best, the sheer luminosity here is overwhelming. It's like stumbling into the world's first floodlit stadium, except the spectators are priests and pilgrims, not soccer fans. This is no ordinary house of worship. Babylonian temples were part holy sanctuary, part administrative hub, part entertainment venue. Picture a mashup of church, town hall and concert hall. And unlike modern churches where nighttime services are rare, Babylonian temples ran around the clock. The gods demanded constant attention, and humans obliged. At the centre of the courtyard you spot the altar. Smoke rises in twisting plumes as priests in white linen robes tend the fires. They murmur incantations while sprinkling fragrant resins, cedar, myrrh, frankincense onto the flames. The smell is intoxicating, thick and spicy, sinking into your lungs like incense in a yoga studio cranked up to 11. Behind them towers the ziggurat, the iconic step pyramid structure reaching toward the heavens. Even in darkness, its silhouette dominates the skyline. Lamps dot its stairways like stars pinned to a mountain, leading upward toward shrines where the gods supposedly dwelled. Tonight, however, all eyes are on the courtyard. You weave through the crowd. Families huddle together on woven mats, whispering prayers. Merchants sit cross-legged, offering small bowls of grain or oil as tribute. Children scamper underfoot, wide-eyed at the spectacle, and everywhere the low hum of chanting fills the air, a constant undercurrent that vibrates in your bones. Now, let's be clear. Babylonian religion wasn't a once-a-week affair. It was all-consuming. The gods, Marduk, Ishtar, Shamash, Nabu, and a whole roster of others were believed to control literally everything. Crops, fertility, health, weather, even whether your sheep survived the winter. To neglect them was to court disaster. So these rituals weren't optional nightlife, they were survival strategy. A group of priests begins a procession. Drums pound in steady rhythm and the chanting rises. They carry offerings, baskets of dates, clay jugs of beer, slabs of freshly butchered lamb. The smell of roasting meat soon joins the incense, a sacred barbecue for divine guests. You wonder, do the gods really eat this stuff? The answer, according to Babylonian belief, is yes, though they consumed only the spiritual essence, leaving the physical remains for priests and worshippers to share. Convenient, right? Feed the gods, then feed yourself. At one side of the courtyard, musicians strike up a tune. A harpist plucks a deep, resonant melody, while a flutist overlays high, trembling notes. The combination is haunting like the soundtrack of a dream you can't quite wake from. Dancers join in, moving slowly at first, then building into whirling spins. Their arms slice the smoky air, their jewellery catching and reflecting lamplight. Every movement is both performance and prayer. You begin to realise something crucial. Babylonian temple nightlife was not solemn. It was ecstatic, loud, sensory. The gods were not distant, detached figures. They were party guests who had to be entertained, flattered, and kept happy. Worship here feels less like penance and more like theatre. Near the altar, a priest raises his arms and bellows a hymn to Ishtar, goddess of love and war. His voice cracks, but the crowd joins in anyway, repeating refrains until the sound swells into something primal. Ishtar's festivals, you've heard, are the wildest of all, filled with ecstatic dancing, music, even rituals of sacred sexuality. Tonight may not be one of her major feasts, but the energy in the courtyard suggests her presence is never far. A young acolyte offers you a small clay cup. Inside is beer not tavern quality froth, but a sacred brew reserved for ritual. You take a sip. It's thicker, sweeter, laced with herbs. The taste is foreign, but as it slides down your throat, you feel a strange warmth, as if the boundary between you and the crowd is dissolving. You're not just an observer now, you're a participant. Elsewhere, diviners are at work. One kneels beside a freshly sacrificed goat, peering into its liver with unsettling focus. Babylonian priests believed the gods wrote their will in the organs of animals. To modern eyes, it looks like messy butchery. To them, it's cosmic communication. The diviner mutters to himself, then nods grimly. Apparently, the omens are mixed. The farmer waiting for the answer looks pale, clutching his tunic. The fate of his harvest may have just been decided in a single organ's curve. In another corner, astrologers climb a platform, tilting their heads to the night sky. They scratch notes onto clay tablets, tracking the movements of Jupiter, Venus, Mars. To Babylonians, the heavens were a script written by gods, and deciphering it was crucial. These men are the original night shift workers, staring at stars long before astronomers turned it into science. You wonder how many of their predictions were accurate, or how many drunk tavern bets depended on them. But the courtyard isn't just for ritual specialists, it's for everyone. A farmer and his wife lay a small basket of onions at the altar. A soldier kneels silently, helmet clutched to his chest. A mother whispers her child's name 3 times, hoping for healing. These gestures are small, personal, yet they ripple into the greater ritual, weaving ordinary lives into the fabric of divine attention. Still, not everyone here is purely pious. In the shadows near the temple wall, a group of young men snicker, sneaking swigs from a contraband jug. A priest's assistant shoos them away, muttering curses. Elsewhere, merchants eye each other suspiciously, wondering whose offerings are more generous, whose devotion might curry more favor with temple administrators. Religion and politics were never separate in Babylon. They were entwined like barley stalks in a braid. The night deepens, but the courtyard shows no sign of slowing. Drums intensify, chants grow louder, faster. Dancers whirl until sweat glistens on their skin. For a moment, the entire assembly seems to tilt into trance. You feel yourself swept up, your heartbeat sinking with the rhythm, your thoughts dissolving into collective energy. This isn't passive worship, it's participatory ecstasy. Suddenly a shout. A priest steps forward, holding aloft a shining idol small enough to carry, but glowing in the lamplight like molten gold. The crowd erupts. People raise their arms, wail, clap, press their foreheads to the ground. The idol, perhaps of Marduk himself, is paraded around the courtyard. It's the climax of the night, the moment when divine presence is most tangible. You're half convinced the air itself shivers. When the idol is returned to its shrine, the energy begins to ebb. People slump, exhausted, as though the frenzy drained them. Musicians slow their tempo. Priests extinguish smaller lamps, letting the courtyard sink into softer shadows. The night isn't over, but its fever has broken. You take a final look around. The temple courtyard, once quiet stone, has become a living organism, beating, breathing, glowing. It's not just a space, it's an engine, converting human devotion into cosmic order. In a city like Babylon, where floods could erase whole neighborhoods and war was never far away, this engine mattered. It gave meaning, it gave comfort, it gave spectacle. As you step back into the street, the chants still echo in your ears. The tavern was laughter, the temple is awe and together. They form the twin heartbeats of Babylonian nightlife. One for the body, one for the soul. The temple courtyard is still humming in your ears when you step into the next stretch of Babylonian nightlife. The chants have softened, the incense has thinned, and the priests retreat to their inner sanctuaries. But the night itself isn't done with you, not even close. Because if Babylon knew anything, it was that gods might need ritual, but humans needed rhythm. Somewhere down the street, the faint twang of a string carries on the warm night air. You follow it instinctively, like a moth to flame, and before long you find yourself in another open space, smaller than the temple courtyard, but alive with energy. Here, the stars themselves seem to be keeping time, blinking above as if tapping along. Babylonians were, by all surviving accounts, obsessed with music. It wasn't background noise, it wasn't filler, it was central to life. Worship, celebration, mourning, storytelling, even politics. Imagine a world without Spotify, radio, or YouTube, and then ask yourself, how do you entertain, can soul and inspire thousands of people? The answer? You pick up an instrument and you make it happen live. And these instruments, they were as varied as they were inventive. The harp, big, triangular, elegant, was the king of the ensemble. Some were as tall as a man, with strings stretched taut across wooden frames decorated in gold and lapis lazuli. Their deep, resonant notes could shake a courtyard into silence, then build into rolling waves that carried whole crowds. You hear one now, strummed with slow, deliberate gravity, each chord a doorway to a new mood. Beside the harp is the lyre, smaller, more agile, producing lighter, dancing tones. If the harp is a stately elder, the lyre is its playful cousin, bouncing between notes like a child skipping on cobblestones. Then comes the flute reed pipes carved with precision, blowing out high, trembling voices that soar above the thicker strings. It's sharp, piercing, insistent. You can't ignore it. It cuts right through the chatter and seizes your attention. And of course, the drums. Always the drums. Handheld frame drums beaten by palms, large kettle drums struck with sticks, even tambourine-like instruments with rattling jingles. They set the heartbeat, the inescapable thud that your own chest can't help but sync with. In Babylon, as in every culture, rhythm was the great unifier. The players sit cross-legged on woven mats, swaying as they perform. Their eyes are half closed, not in exhaustion but in focus, as though they are channeling something larger than themselves. And perhaps they are, for in Babylonian belief, music wasn't just entertainment, it was divine technology. It could summon gods, soothe demons, heal sickness. A wrong note might insult a deity. A perfect harmony might open a path between mortal and divine. You notice the crowd reacting in waves. Some nod gently smiling, others rock more vigorously, lips moving silently in prayer. And then there are the dancers. Ah, the dancers. They spill into the open space like sparks from a fire. Barefoot, adorned with jangling jewelry, their tunics light enough to move freely, they spin and bend and leap with abandon. Their movements are not random, though. They follow patterns, gestures that mean something. A raised arm might invoke the rising sun. A lowered head might honor the dead. A sway of the hips might imitate the flow of the river. Babylonian dance, like its music, was functional. It symbolized, it communicated, it worked. But it was also intoxicating. Watch too long, and you find yourself breathing with the dancers, anticipating their turns, your own feet itching to join. That's the point. It pulls you in. The music isn't a performance to observe, it's a net to be caught in. Suddenly, the drumming quickens. The harpist strums harder. The flute launches into a dizzying, high-pitched solo. The dancers answer by spinning faster, their anklets chiming in sync with the beat. The whole assembly rises, cheers, claps, shouts. It's chaos, but controlled chaos, the kind that feels on the verge of tipping into madness but never quite does. This, you realize, is nightlife Babylon style. Not passive entertainment, but collective ecstasy. Music and dance are vehicles for dissolving the self, for joining something larger, a group, a god, a universe. For a few moments, you're not you, you're part of the rhythm. And this wasn't limited to temple contexts. Musicians and dancers thrived in taverns, marketplaces, even private homes. Weddings were drenched in music. Funerals too, though with slower, dirge-like tones. Soldiers marched to drums. Children learned songs as mnemonics to remember proverbs and histories. Even law courts sometimes used musicians to dramatize proceedings. Yes, imagine your lawsuit being accompanied by background harp. The dancers you see now are likely professionals, hired to perform at festivals and feasts. Their skills are too polished to be spontaneous. In Babylonian society, such entertainers held an odd position, respected for their art, yet often morally suspect. Some were linked to temples performing sacred dances. Others were linked to taverns, where their movements blurred into seduction. To some conservative priests, they embodied temptation. To the people in this courtyard tonight, they embody joy. The music shifts again, this time softer, slower, almost mournful. The dancers adjust, moving with long, sweeping gestures, their arms rising like reeds in a breeze. The crowd quiets. Even children stop fidgeting. There's a heaviness in the air, a communal sigh. Maybe this song recalls a lost battle. Maybe it remembers a flood. Or maybe it simply acknowledges the fragility of life in a world where disease, famine, and conquest always lurked. But just as the sadness threatens to settle, the tempo rises once more. The drums return to their insistent thud, the flutes trill, the dancers leap, and the sorrow is shaken off, transformed into laughter and applause. The Babylonians knew what every good DJ knows. You don't end on a downbeat. You build the tension, let it sink, then release it into exhilaration. Somewhere on the edge of the gathering, you spot a scribe etching marks into a clay tablet. Perhaps he's recording the lyrics of a hymn, or noting which tunes stirred the strongest responses. Babylonian culture was obsessed with documentation. They may not have had sheet music in the modern sense, but they had ways of preserving songs. Imagine, the melody you're hearing tonight might survive in some form on a clay shard buried for millennia. By now, you've been standing long enough that your body can't resist. When the dancers gesture for the crowd to join, you step forward. Tentatively at first, 2 awkward steps, a hesitant clap. But then the rhythm catches you. Someone grabs your hand, pulls you into the circle. You laugh, stumble, then find your footing. Suddenly you're part of the choreography, your movements blending with dozens of others, your breath syncing with the pulse of drums. It doesn't matter that you don't know the steps. The point is not precision, it's surrender. To music, to motion, to the Babylonian night itself. Hours pass like minutes. Sweat slicks your skin. Your voice grows hoarse from shouting with the crowd. But still the music goes, undiminished. Because in Babylon, night was not something to endure. It was something to live in fully, to squeeze until dawn wrung it dry. At last, the musicians begin to tire. Their strumming grows slower, their flutes softer, their drums weaker. One by one, the dancers collapse onto mats, laughing breathlessly. The crowd claps a final time, then disperses, drifting toward homes, taverns, or temples. The night has more to give, but this chapter has closed. You step aside, catching your breath. The silence after the music is almost deafening. But it's a satisfying silence, like the hush that follows fireworks. You know you've just glimpsed something essential about Babylonian life. Their nights were not quiet. They were crafted symphonies of sound and motion, equal parts art and devotion, pleasure and purpose. And as you continue down the street, the echoes follow you, harp strings buzzing in your memory, flutes whistling in your mind, drums thudding in your chest. Babylon doesn't let you walk away easily. Its music lingers like perfume, like prayer, like the pulse of an ancient city that never truly sleeps. Word count, 2,315. The music still hums faintly in your bones as you drift away from the dancers. The air is cooler now, the night deepens. The city feels like it's settling, like a beast curling into itself after stretching its limbs. But Babylon doesn't sleep, it just changes rhythm. You follow the glow of small fires. Not the torches of guards or the lamps of taverns, but low, clustered flames that flicker against clay walls. You hear laughter, then silence, then a single voice rising above the night. You've stumbled upon one of the city's oldest and most sacred forms of nightlife, storytelling. Here, no harp strings vibrate, no drums thunder. The music is words, the instruments are voices, and the stage is nothing more than firelight, smoke, and the hush of listeners leaning close. A man sits cross-legged before the flames, his face half-lit, half-shadowed. His robe is plain, his beard neatly trimmed, but his eyes burn with a peculiar intensity. Children sit in a circle around him, their legs tucked beneath them, their wide eyes reflecting the fire. Adults linger just behind, pretending they're too sophisticated for tales, but clearly caught in the pull. He begins slowly, his voice low, pulling the listeners closer without moving. His words paint the beginning of the world, the gods meeting in darkness, the waters swirling, chaos pressing at the edges. He speaks of Apsu, the fresh water, and Tiamat, the salt sea, their mingling, their children born from foam and shadow. And suddenly you realize you're hearing the Enuma Elish, the Babylonian creation epic. Not on a clay tablet in a museum, not translated into tidy English, but alive, spoken, sung, chanted as it was meant to be. Each word is a drumbeat, each pause a held breath. The crowd is utterly still. The fire pops and cracks, sending sparks upward, as if the flames themselves are listening. When the storyteller describes Marduk the storm god, champion of order rising against Tiamat, his voice swells. He raises his arms, mimicking Marduk's bow, his eyes wide, his tone fierce. The children gasp. The adults nod grimly, reminded of the endless struggle between chaos and order that defines not just myth, but life itself. Then, softer now, he describes the creation of humans. Clay mixed with divine blood, moulded by gods who wanted servants to ease their burdens. He doesn't embellish this part. He doesn't need to. The implication lingers in the firelight. You are here to serve, but you are also born of divine essence, a strange comfort and a heavy weight rolled into one. The tale ends not with applause, but with silence, a deep, reverent silence, broken only when the storyteller exhales and leans back. The spell lifts, children wiggle, adults stretch. The fire crackles louder now that the voice has ceased. But another voice rises, a woman this time, older, her hair braided with bits of copper. She begins a different kind of tale, not of gods, but of kings. She speaks of Gilgamesh, 2/3 divine and 1/3 mortal, who ruled Uruk with arrogance until the gods sent him a rival, Enkidu. Her voice trembles slightly when she recounts their friendship, their laughter, their wild adventures. And then, when she reaches Enkidu's death, her tone cracks. Even the fire seems to dim. The children lean forward, unblinking, sensing the gravity even if they don't understand. The adults lower their eyes. Some have lost friends. Some know the sting of grief too well. The story is myth, but it's also mirror. As she describes Gilgamesh's desperate quest for immortality, you feel a lump in your throat. It's not just a tale of a king, it's the human condition itself, raging against death, seeking meaning, fearing the end. And in this moment, you realize why storytelling mattered so much in Babylon. It wasn't entertainment, it was survival, because Babylonian nights weren't safe. Famine, disease, invaders, floods, all could strike without warning. Life was fragile, precarious. To gather around a fire and hear of gods who wrestled chaos, of heroes who defied death, was to remind yourself that your struggles were not new. Others had faced them, others had endured, but not all stories were heavy. As the night deepens, the mood shifts. A younger man takes the storyteller's place, grinning slyly. His tale is about a trickster servant who outsmarts his master by pretending to know the will of the gods. The crowd chuckles, then laughs outright. The man exaggerates voices, mimics faces, even throws in a clumsy dance step or two. The fire flickers madly as the crowd roars. This too is part of Babylonian storytelling, humour. Because where there is wine or beer, more likely, and where there is fire, there must also be laughter. It's the release valve after the heavy myths, the balance to the sorrow of heroes. The stories continue in cycles. Gods, kings, tricksters, lovers, monsters. Some are short, no more than a riddle stretched into a punchline. Others are long epics that could last until dawn. Each storyteller brings their own flair. Some gesture wildly, almost dancing with the words. Others sit still, letting silence and pacing do the work. A great storyteller doesn't just speak, he conducts the entire night like an orchestra. What strikes you most is the way the crowd responds. They're not passive listeners. They gasp, groan, cheer, clap. Children squeal and cover their faces when monsters appear. Elders mutter agreements when morals are delivered. Occasionally someone interrupts. No, that's not how the story goes. And a lively debate ensues until consensus is reached or the storyteller swats the heckler with a joke. And here's the kicker. These stories aren't written down for this crowd. Clay tablets exist, yes, but they're for the literate elite, the scribes and priests. For everyone else, memory is the library. Storytelling is the archive. These fires are universities, where history, myth, morality and humour are passed on not through books, but through breath. you catch sight of a boy mimicking the storyteller's gestures when he thinks no one is looking. Someday, he'll sit where the man sits now, spinning the same tales with his own inflections. And in that way, Babylon remembers itself. The night grows later. The fires burn lower. But the stories continue, each flame-fed circle its own theatre. Walk down any street, and you'll find another one group enraptured by the tale of Ishtar's descent into the underworld, another laughing at a fable about a lazy farmer. Storytelling is everywhere, because fire is everywhere. And in this moment you realize Babylon didn't just live by daylight, it lived by story. The walls, the ziggurats, the markets, all were impressive. But the true city, the living city, existed in words passed mouth to ear, generation to generation, flickering in the fragile space between fire and dark. As dawn hints faintly at the horizon, the last storyteller closes his tale. The fire has dwindled to embers. People stretch, yawn, gather their cloaks. Children are asleep against their parents' laps. The storytellers smile, tired but triumphant, knowing they've carried another night safely across the abyss. You walk away slowly, the silence of early morning pressing in. Your mind is full of gods battling monsters, of kings searching for meaning, of tricksters cackling at their masters. The stories follow you like shadows, blending with your own thoughts, your own fears. And maybe that's the point. Storytelling wasn't just Babylonian nightlife, it was Babylonian life. To tell stories was to live twice once in action, once in memory. And in a world where clay crumbles and empires fall, the stories are what endure. The fires fade behind you, and the laughter of the storytellers lingers like smoke in your ears. You drift into the side streets, those shadowed veins of the city where the flames of the marketplace do not reach, where torchlight is scarce and moonlight becomes the only lamp. And here, Babylon changes again. If the taverns are loud and the storytellers are sacred, these back alleys are. Let's just say more complicated, because here the subject is not gods or kings. It's people, hearts, whispers, and the things that officially don't happen, but very obviously do. You move slowly, your sandals scraping on baked earth, passing walls that loom higher than they seem in the day. The mud brick holds the heat of the sun, and the alleys sweat warmth even at midnight. Voices drift from the darkness, low and urgent, punctuated by soft laughter. You recognize the sound instantly. It's not the roar of a tavern, not the chant of a temple. It's intimacy. Babylon, for all its rigid laws and public rituals, leaves plenty of space for private shadows. You see a young couple pressed against a corner wall, the boy in a plain worker's tunic, the girl with her hair bound in a simple bronze pin. They whisper furiously, glancing over their shoulders like nervous sparrows. She leans in, her voice sharp but fond, and he tries to soothe her with promises. You don't need to understand Akkadian to get it. The body language is universal. He swears tomorrow he'll speak to her father. She laughs, not cruelly but knowingly, because tomorrow is always tomorrow. Historians still argue whether Babylonian parents were stricter than Roman ones, but the anxiety etched across the boy's face says enough. Courtship in Babylon is less about roses and more about surviving the extended family gauntlet. You step past, and in another doorway, you catch a very different scene. A wealthy man, draped in linen and perfumed oil, speaks in hushed tones to a woman with kohl-rimmed eyes and bright jewelry that flashes in the dim. She is not his wife. You can tell by the way she never lets him touch her arm fully, by the way she glances at the purse he carries more than his face. She's a temple courtesan, one of the so-called sacred women attached to Ishtar's cult, and whether she is here for love, duty, or survival is a matter scholars still debate fiercely. Some argue these women held significant independence, others claim they were victims of exploitation. You watch her smile, calculated, elegant, and you realize both could be true at once. But romance in Babylon isn't always furtive. Sometimes it's bold, defiant even. At the end of one alley, beneath a half-collapsed arch, a group of young men strum lyres softly while a girl sings. Her voice carries down the corridor like perfume. She doesn't lower her gaze, doesn't whisper, doesn't hide. Lovers gather here, seated shoulder to shoulder, some clasping hands openly. It's risky. Babylon had rules about propriety, about marriage contracts sealed in front of scribes, about dowries and bride prices that turned affection into economics. But youth has a way of ignoring ledgers. You watch them with a mix of admiration and worry, because in this city, affection is both a rebellion and a relief. The smell of night blossoms jasmine and date palm drifts through the cracks in the alley. A dog barks somewhere distant, the sound flat and lonely. You pass another couple sitting quietly on a stair, not touching, barely speaking, just leaning into the same silence together. In a world of noise market shouts, priestly chants, the hammering of bronze by day, this shared quiet is perhaps the greatest intimacy. No clay tablet would record their names, no ziggurat wall would carve their likeness. But here they are, two human beings clinging to each other in a city of thousands, where anonymity is the greatest danger of all. And then, the darker side. Not all shadows shelter love. In one corner, two men argue in low tones, voices sharp as blades. You don't need to hear every word to know the tension. One accuses, the other defends. The topic is a woman, or perhaps money promised and not delivered. A third figure, silent, nervous, hovers nearby, caught between loyalty and fear. Romance in Babylon often collided with contracts, because love was not just emotion, it was property, obligation, inheritance. Failing those obligations could end more than a marriage, it could end a family's standing. The argument crescendos, then fades into muttered threats. You move on quickly. Some shadows are better left unexamined, but even in these tense corners, Babylon's alleys hum with life. You spot graffiti etched crudely into a wall, hearts' names, maybe crude jokes about lovers that would make sense if you were fluent in cuneiform slang. Archaeologists really have found such markings, suggesting that even in the cradle of civilization, young people were doodling their crushes into permanence. Humanity doesn't change much. 2 sticks and a curve scratched into brick is as eternal as any epic. Further along, you catch a glimpse of something stranger. A priest in deep indigo robes kneels in shadow, whispering over 2 figures clasping hands. It's a midnight blessing, improvised and intimate, without the pomp of the temple. The priest sprinkles water from a clay jug, murmurs the name of Ishtar, and ties a simple knot of reed between the lovers' wrists. Is it official? No. Is it binding? Perhaps only in their hearts. But the couple glows with the conviction that this moment is sacred, no matter what tablets might say. Scholars still argue whether such clandestine rituals had legal weight, but in that alley, in that night, it hardly matters. You pause to consider your own time. Swipe left, swipe right, text unread, ghosted, blocked. Babylon had no apps, no glowing screens, but it had alleys, firelight, whispered promises, and the same nervous thrum in the chest that people carry today. You realize, for all the gods and kings, for all the ziggurats and canals, Babylon's truest continuity with you lies here in the beating heart, in the fragile hope of connection. The night grows cooler now. The alleys begin to empty. Couples slip away into doorways, part with hurried kisses, or vanish back into crowded homes where privacy doesn't exist, but secrecy somehow still thrives. The city exhales. A rooster crows too early, confused by torchlight, reminding everyone that dawn is never far. You step back into the main street, the stars beginning to pale, and you carry with you the impression that Babylon's nights were not just about spectacle taverns, music, temples, but also about the human need to belong, to be seen, to be touched. In those shadowed alleys, civilization's most private battles played out, between duty and desire, secrecy and honesty, fear and longing. Tomorrow, scribes will write treaties, priests will chant hymns, kings will carve their conquests in stone. But tonight, in these shadows, Babylon whispers its truest story, not of empire, but of love. The alleys fade behind you. The last whispers of young lovers, the half-hidden shadows of secret meetings, all grow quiet as you turn toward the heart of the city, the palace. The streets widen. The mud brick walls give way to massive gates carved with lions and bulls, their eyes gleaming faintly in torchlight. The palace of Babylon does not sleep. Its stones are alive with sound, and as you step closer, the faint rhythm of drums reaches you like the beat of some distant heart. Tonight, a feast is underway, a royal feast. And unlike the modest households or the shadowed alleys, the palace does not whisper, it declares. You pass under an arch lined with bronze fittings that glimmer even in low light. The guards stand at attention, spears glinting, faces carved in stone-like discipline. They do not acknowledge you, but you feel their presence, a reminder that this is a space where power sits at the table and where every laugh carries weight. Inside, the air is warm, scented with roasted meat, honeyed wine, and the faint tang of incense burning in golden bowls. The ceilings rise impossibly high, supported by wooden beams painted in lapis blue and ochre red. Along the walls, torch brackets flare, casting flickering shadows over murals that depict kings conquering enemies, gods granting blessings, rivers overflowing with fish. But tonight, the focus is not on those painted glories. Tonight, it is on the long banquet tables stretching the length of the hall. Imagine it. Low wooden tables covered in linen, dishes of polished bronze and silver, bowls of glazed clay from far-off kilns. Platters overflow with more food than most Babylonians would see in a year. Roasted lamb, dripping fat into the coals, steaming pots of stew spiced with garlic and cumin, freshly baked flatbreads stacked high, baskets of figs, dates and pomegranates split open to reveal their jeweled seeds. Jugs of beer, thick and foamy, sit beside jars of imported wine, their clay necks wrapped in damp cloth to keep them cool. The feast is not only for eating, it is a performance. Every dish tells the same story. Look how far Babylon's reach extends. Look how much wealth the king commands. Look how generous he can be with what is his alone to give. Zodagon La, the nobility fill the benches, men in embroidered robes of linen, dyed with rare blues and purples, colours so costly they might as well be made of starlight. Women glitter with gold jewellery, heavy earrings swaying as they tilt their heads in laughter, necklaces resting like rivers of light across their chests. They lean close, voices overlapping, their words competing with the music that drifts from the far side of the hall. And the music never stops. Drummers beat a slow pulse, while lyres and harps weave melodies above it. Reed flutes add their plaintive cry, the sound echoing like wind through reeds on the riverbank. Singers, hired from the temple choirs, lift their voices in songs that praise the king, the gods, and the glory of Babylon itself. The music is not background, it is the very rhythm of the feast, guiding when guests drink, when they clap, when they rise to dance. Ah, and the dancing. Dancers whirl across the tiled floor, their skirts of bright fabric flaring, anklets jingling in complex rhythms. Their movements tell stories older than the city itself. The battle between gods, the return of fertility each spring, the endless dance of love and loss. The nobles watch entranced, but also indulgent, because here, the arts serve them. Every performance is both entertainment and flattery, reminding them that Babylon's glory exists for their delight. Yet beneath the beauty, there is weight. Every feast is political. Who sits closest to the king? Who receives the most generous portion of lamb? Who is offered the rarest wine? These are not accidents. They are signals, carefully arranged hierarchies, written not on clay, but in the placement of dishes and the tilt of a host's smile. At the head of the hall, upon a raised dais, sits the king himself. Perhaps Hammurabi, perhaps Nebuchadnezzar, perhaps another name that ruled in Babylon's long centuries, but for tonight, the figure is eternal. He reclines on a cushioned seat, a goblet in hand, his robe woven with patterns only the palace weavers can produce. His beard is oiled and curled, his eyes dark and sharp. Around him, advisors and generals hover like satellites, laughing at his jokes, echoing his toasts, measuring every word against the future they hope to secure. And beside him, the queen. Draped in silks adorned with jewels that catch the torchlight and scatter it like fire, she holds her own court. The noble women around her lean in, whispering, gossiping, laughing lightly, though never too loudly. Her presence balances the king's, softens it, and sometimes sharpens it. Because power in Babylon is not only a man's game, it is a family's, a dynasty's, a web of alliances woven in whispers between bites of bread and sips of wine. You watch as servants glide through the hall, silent but swift, young men with trays of steaming dishes, young women pouring drinks, refilling cups before they are half empty. Their eyes are lowered, but their ears are open. They hear every joke, every promise, every slip of the tongue. In the morning, they will carry fragments of these words into the city, and the gossip will grow, reshaped and retold, until it becomes legend or scandal. Even in silence, they are part of the feast. There is laughter now, great roaring laughter, as a guest tells a story of hunting lions near the river. His arms spread wide, his voice booming, and though perhaps the lion was smaller in truth, tonight it grows with each retelling. Another guest interrupts with his own tale, insisting that he faced 2 lions at once, armed with nothing but a spear. The crowd claps, cheers, jeers. These stories are not about truth, they are about reputation. In the palace, reputation is as important as bloodline, as heavy as wealth. But notice too the quieter conversations. 2 men lean close, voices nearly lost beneath the music. Their hands move subtly, tracing shapes on the table with fingers sticky from honey. They are not discussing lions, they are discussing trade routes, military campaigns, marriages to be arranged. In the palace feast, every laugh may hide a negotiation, every toast may seal an alliance, and the wine flows, imported from distant vineyards, stronger than the barley beer most Babylonians drink. It loosens tongues and quickens the pulse. The nobles drink deeply, their faces flushing, their words stumbling into half songs, half arguments. A toast is raised to the king, to Ishtar, to Marduk, to Babylon itself. Cups clash, liquid spills onto the floor, but no one cares. The feast is not neat, it is alive. Hours pass, though time seems strange in the palace. Torchlight blurs into smoke, laughter into song. Some nobles lean back, eyes half shut, their bellies full, their spirits heavy with drink. Others rise to dance, staggering at first, then spinning with abandon. A young scribe scribbles notes in the corner, tasked with recording not the spilled wine or the drunken songs, but the toasts, the declarations, the promises made. Tomorrow, clay tablets will capture these moments, making them permanent. And you realize this feast is more than pleasure. It is theatre, it is politics, it is religion, it is life condensed into one hall, one night, one performance of power and beauty. Step outside for a moment, into the cool night air. You hear the feast even from the palace steps, the drums, the shouts, the faint echo of song. Beyond the gates, the rest of Babylon stirs. Markets close, taverns grow quiet, alleys darken. But here, within these walls, the night burns bright, as if the stars themselves have bent down to attend the feast. When dawn comes, the torches will gutter, the dishes will be cleared, the servants will sweep away the bones and spilled wine. The nobles will stumble home, some proud, some embarrassed, some already plotting the next gathering. The king will retreat to his chambers, the queen to hers. But the memory of the feast will linger, like smoke clinging to hair, like honey on the tongue. And the city will remember. Because in Babylon a royal feast is never just a feast. It is the heartbeat of empire, pounding loudly enough that even centuries later you can almost hear it. You step out of the palace. The last echoes of the feast music, laughter, drunken toasts, drift into the distance, fading into the night like smoke. The streets stretch before you, narrower now, less polished, but more alive in their own way. If the palace is the heart of Babylon's power, the markets at night are the soul of its people, and nothing reveals that soul more clearly than food. The air hits you first, thick with scents that mingle and clash in ways that make your stomach turn and growl all at once. Charcoal smoke drifts upward from clay ovens, carrying with it the rich smell of bread baking, flat, round, blistered at the edges. From another stall comes the tang of frying fish, the oil snapping and hissing, skin curling and crisping as the vendor sprinkles salt and crushed herbs across it. Somewhere close, a pot of stew bubbles slowly, releasing the sharp bite of garlic and the sweetness of onions softened in fat. You follow your nose. Here, the market glows with lamplight. Torches thrust into brackets along the walls flicker, and oil lamps swing from ropes above stalls, casting halos of yellow over vendors and their goods. The shadows stretch long, bending over baskets of figs and dates, over trays of roasted chickpeas, over piles of sesame cakes dusted with crushed nuts. Each stall is its own world, its own performance, and each vendor a master of calling attention to themselves. "Hot bread, straight from the oven," one cries. His voice carries above the din. He flips a flatbread from the clay wall of a tandoor-like oven, steam rising in a fragrant cloud. The bread is blistered with golden bubbles, soft in the middle, crisp at the edges. Customers gather instantly, reaching with coins in hand. The vendor tears the bread into halves and quarters, wrapping them in palm leaves, handing them out with practiced speed. The buyers walk away already chewing, already sighing. Bread is not a luxury here, it is life itself. But tonight, with the smell so fresh, it feels like a feast. A few steps away, a fishmonger leans over his stall, oil popping loudly in a pan. The river Dajla has been generous, and the day's catch still shines faintly in the lamplight, silver scales catching fire as they cook. He guts and fries them with quick motions, dropping handfuls of herbs into the pan, the sizzling so loud it almost drowns out the chatter around him. He serves the fish wrapped in thin bread, oil soaking into the crust, a squeeze of pomegranate juice squeezed over the top. People eat standing, tearing flesh with their fingers, licking salt from their hands, shaking their heads in pleasure. It is not refined. It is not meant to be. It is nourishment. It is joy. It is the taste of Babylon's river carried into the night. And sweets, oh, the sweets. Babylonian nights are never short of sugar. Vendors sell trays of dates stuffed with almonds, dipped in honey so thick it glistens under the torchlight. Others press figs into sticky cakes, rolling them in sesame seeds, cutting them into bite-sized pieces. A boy no older than 12 carries a tray across his shoulders, calling out the way children everywhere call, half play, half business. His sweets are cheap, meant for workers heading home, but the crowd around him treats them like treasure. One bite, and the chew of fruit, the crackle of seeds, the rush of sugar fills the mouth. In the palace, wealth is measured in jewels and wine. Here, it is measured in sweetness. But food in the streets is more than taste. It is noise, movement, community. The market thrums with sound. Vendors calling, customers bargaining, children laughing, dogs barking for scraps. A pot clatters, a jug tips and breaks, spilling beer across the dirt. People shout, then laugh, then carry on. This chaos is not disorder, it is life itself. Beating with the pulse of the city, you pause by a stall where skewers of meat roast slowly over coals. The vendor turns them carefully, brushing them with fat, letting the fire flare and lick the edges. The smell is intoxicating, lamb seasoned with garlic and coriander, charred just enough to blacken at the corners. He hands you one, the wood hot in your fingers, the meat sizzling still. You bite, and the juices flood your mouth, smoky, salty, rich. For a moment, you're no longer a visitor, no longer a watcher. You are a Babylonian, eating with your hands, surrounded by strangers, warmed by food and fire. Around you, people do the same. Workers who hauled bricks all day sit side by side with scribes, their clay tablets tucked under their arms. Women carrying water jars pause to sip beer from clay cups, laughing with neighbours. Old men chew bread slowly, watching the crowd with eyes that have seen too much. And children dart between legs, stealing bites, laughing when they are caught, running into the night. The drinks flow too. Beer is everywhere, thick and cloudy, served in large jars with straws poking out. People drink together, leaning close, sharing the same vessel. Sometimes the beer is flavoured with dates, sometimes with honey. sometimes with herbs. Each sip is earthy, yeasty, filling. Wine exists here too, though rarer and more expensive, imported from distant vineyards. Those who can afford it sip carefully, almost proudly, their red-stained lips announcing their status as loudly as any robe, and as people eat and drink, stories flow. A man at one table tells a tale of a caravan that brought spices from the far mountains, exaggerating each detail until the crowd gasps. Another insists he once saw a lion wandering the outskirts of the city, though his friends laugh and say he must have been drunk. A woman hums softly as she eats, rocking her baby to sleep against her chest. The market is not just a place to fill the stomach, it is a place to fill the evening, to meet, to talk, to remind yourself you belong to a city that never sleeps. But look closely. Street food is also survival. For many, these stalls are the only chance at meat, at sweets, at a full stomach. Bread may be daily, but lamb, honey, wine, these are glimpses of wealth, snatched one night at a time. A labourer who buys a skewer of lamb tonight may not taste it again for weeks, and yet he eats slowly, savouring, stretching the moment as if to make it last until the next feast. The vendors know this. Their calls are loud, their jokes sharper than their knives. They promise freshness, they boast about spices, they tease customers who hesitate. Better to buy now than to dream hungry, one shouts, grinning as he flips a skewer. The people laugh, and they buy. Humour is part of the sale, part of the flavour. Farther down, near the edge of the riverbank, a cluster of stalls sells drinks chilled with clay jars lowered into the cool water, beer colder than the night itself, ladled out into cups that sweat against your palms. The taste is sharper here, the coldness shocking after hours in the thick summer air. People gather in tight knots, voices low, leaning in. Deals are struck here, quiet ones, hidden under the cover of ordinary drinking. A contract whispered between sips, a loan offered in exchange for loyalty, a promise made under lamplight. And in all this, there is music. Not the polished choirs of the palace, not the flutes of the temple, but rougher, earthier sounds. A man beats a drum with the flat of his hand, keeping a rhythm that makes heads nod. A boy plucks a lyre, strings buzzing slightly out of tune. Women clap, children stamp their feet, and suddenly someone sings. A folk song, a work song, maybe a drinking song. The words are simple, but the voices are strong, and for a few moments the market becomes a chorus. The night wears on. The lamps burn low, their oil sputtering. You climb away from the glow of the marketplace, following a narrow street that snakes upward, higher and higher, until the noise of food and laughter falls away. Here, Babylon breathes differently. The city still hums, but beneath it there is another rhythm slower, more deliberate, older than the walls themselves. It is the rhythm of the stars. On the rooftops, Babylon comes alive in a way most never see. Flat mud brick roofs stretch across the city like a patchwork of platforms, some stacked higher than others, some narrow, some broad. And upon them sit the watchers of the sky, the astrologer priests wrapped in long robes, tablets resting across their knees, gaze upward with a focus that makes you feel small. The stars above are dazzling. Babylon's air is dry, the desert sky vast and clear, and though smoke from torches and hearths drifts upward, the heavens blaze untouched. Points of fire dot the black, scattered in patterns so ancient that the names for them feel as old as breath itself. The Milky Way arches overhead like a river of crushed pearls, and the priests murmur, tracing lines between stars, connecting them into shapes, animals, gods, destinies. One man leans forward, stylus poised, pressing into wet clay as he marks the path of a planet. He works quickly but carefully, every stroke carrying weight. A mistake here is not just a miscalculation, it is a flaw in prophecy. Because in Babylon, astronomy is not science for its own sake. It is power. It is the art of reading the will of the gods, of predicting floods, wars, and the rise and fall of kings. Another priest chants softly, his words rhythmic, rising and falling with a sweep of his arm as he points to the sky. The moon is in its fullness, the god Sin speaks. Around him, apprentices nod, their young eyes sharp, trying to follow his logic. They sketch too, but their lines are clumsy, their tablets heavy. One coughs, and his teacher silences him with a glance. The stars do not forgive distraction. From this height, you see the city differently. Below, torches flicker, tiny pools of fire. The ziggurat looms still higher, its summit touching the edge of the heavens, a stairway for the gods themselves. The river glitters faintly in the distance, catching stray moonlight. You can hear faint echoes from the marketplace, laughter drifting upward like smoke, but here it seems small, insignificant, swallowed by the sky. A sudden shout breaks the silence. A priest has spotted something unusual, perhaps a wandering star moving against the fixed constellations, perhaps an omen. Others gather, murmuring urgently, their shadows long in the lamplight. Styluses scratch faster, clay tablets fill with fresh marks. The heavens have shifted, and with them, fate itself. You realize something. In this world, no decision is made without the stars. A merchant may consult an astrologer before sending his caravan. A farmer may ask which day is best to sow barley. And kings, especially kings, will not move their armies without confirmation that the gods approve. Babylon is a city built of bricks and mud, but it is also built of constellations and prophecy. Not everyone on the rooftops is a priest. Some are ordinary men, reclining with clay mugs of beer, pointing to stars as they tell stories to their children. A father shows his son the hunter in the sky, tracing the arc of Orion's bow with his finger. A mother sings a lullaby that mentions the bright planet Venus, calling it the goddess who watches over lovers. The sacred and the ordinary blur, the sky belongs to all, but the priests guard their secrets. You notice how they speak in half sentences, mutter formulas under their breath, press their tablets close to their chests. Knowledge is currency, and the right reading of a planet's path can change a man's fortune. Apprentices are chosen carefully, sworn to silence, their lives bound to the temple and the heavens alike. As the night deepens, the air cools. A breeze stirs, carrying with it the scent of oil smoke and river reeds. One by one, lamps sputter out, their flames consumed. Yet the sky only grows brighter, the stars sharper, colder. Priests continue their work, unblinking, until dawn threatens the eastern horizon. For them, the night is not for sleep, it is for vigilance. When you finally turn away, you carry their voices with you, the chants, the scratching of styluses, the heavy silence between calculations. You understand now why Babylon has been called the birthplace of astronomy. These men, perched on rooftops with clay tablets, are not just gazing. They are shaping the way generations will see the sky, the way kings will rule, the way futures will unfold. And so the city sleeps, the markets close, but the stars keep speaking, always speaking. And Babylon, with its restless hunger, never stops listening. The market's last flames sputter out as you drift further into the underbelly of Babylon. Here, the air is cooler, darker, and the voices drop to hushed tones. It is no longer the noise of sellers and laughter, but the kind of whisper that makes the skin crawl. You realize you've crossed into a different night one, ruled not by food or music, but by mystery, by fear, and by hope. This is the realm of sorcery. Babylonians live close to their gods, but they also live close to their fears. Illness, crop failure, miscarriages, sudden death. These are not accidents in their eyes. They are the work of spirits, curses, demons that slip through cracks in the night. And to face them, the city has its quiet army, the Ashipu, the exorcists, the healers of shadow and word. You find them in dim courtyards behind closed doors, on rooftops where no priest dares tread. A circle of oil lamps flickers on the ground, their smoke curling upward like fragile threads. In the centre, a man kneels, his robe plain, his beard trimmed short, his eyes sharp and restless. Before him lies a clay figurine, rough and crude, shaped like a little demon. He murmurs incantations in Akkadian, words that rasp and vibrate in the throat. With every phrase, he smears bitumen across the figurine's face, as if sealing its mouth shut. Around him, apprentices watch silently, clutching wax tablets filled with copied spells. The ritual is not performance, it is work, precise, calculated. A mistake could leave the demon unbound. Elsewhere, a woman stirs herbs in a clay pot over low coals. The smell is bitter, sharp, a mixture of garlic, rue, and something darker, almost metallic. She claims it will drive out the hand of the ghost that presses on the chest of the sick. The potion bubbles, spitting drops onto the fire. She whispers the name of the patient with every stir, weaving their identity into the brew. Those who cannot afford temple physicians come here instead, offering coins, bread, sometimes even secrets, in exchange for hope. Some practices are stranger still. By a riverbank, you see a ritual meant to lift curses. A man stands barefoot in the mud, holding a lamb by its forelegs. He chants as he passes the animal in slow circles around the sufferer's head, transferring the evil into its wool and bones. The lamb bleats once sharply before it is led into the dark. Tomorrow, it will be slaughtered, buried, or set adrift downstream, taking the curse with it. To modern eyes, it may seem cruel, but to Babylon, it is protection. And always, there are amulets, hanging from doorposts, tied around wrists, hidden in garments, clay tablets inscribed with protective prayers, small bronze demons hammered into shape not to haunt but to guard. The most feared spirits, the Lamashtu, who prey on infants, the Pazuzu, who brings fever winds, are themselves invoked, carved, worn as if their own likenesses could keep them at bay. To wear a demon is to master it. Yet sorcery is not only defense, it is also desire. Lovers slip through alleys to find charms that promise fidelity, powders to stir passion, knots tied in cords to bind one heart to another. A young woman presses a bundle of reeds into the hand of a sorceress, whispering a man's name. The sorceress nods knowingly and murmurs, "By Ishtar's fire, he will come." Whether it works or not hardly matters. The act itself gives her courage. But sorcery is also dangerous. To wield it too boldly invites suspicion, even punishment. Officially, only the temple priests and sanctioned exorcists are allowed to command spirits. Yet in the shadow of the ziggurat, many others practice their craft, always careful, always quiet. A whispered word can heal, but it can also accuse. "He bewitched me," someone might claim, and that accusation alone can ruin a family. You notice, too, how fear and respect intertwine. Those who seek sorcery often do so at night, in secret, ashamed to be seen, yet unwilling to face the world without it. They curse it in daylight, then buy it in darkness. Babylon mocks the sorcerers, yet it never silences them, because deep down, everyone believes. As the night deepens, the whispers rise. You hear the rustle of palm leaves as someone buries a figurine at a threshold. You glimpse a woman drawing chalk symbols across a doorway, muttering words under her breath. You pass a young boy clutching a small tablet close to his chest, its inscription glowing faintly in the torchlight. He believes it will protect him. Perhaps it will, and in that moment, you realize sorcery here is not spectacle, it is survival. It is the hidden layer of Babylonian life, woven into the same nights that hold feasts, songs, and markets. It is the invisible shield people carry with them into the uncertainty of tomorrow. By the time you return to the street, the lamps behind you have burned low, and the voices of the sorcerers fade back into the silence. Yet the memory lingers, heavy as the smell of herbs on your clothes, sharp as the chill in your bones. In Babylon, the night does not only feed or entertain, it also whispers. And those whispers, whether of healing, love, or fear, are as much a part of the city as its walls. The streets are different tonight. Where most evenings are dim and murmuring, lit by torches and quiet prayers, tonight Babylon blazes. Lanterns swing from wooden poles, fires leap high in braziers, and the air quivers with the pounding of drums. This is no ordinary night. This is a festival night, and the goddess at its center is none other than Ishtar, goddess of love, goddess of war, goddess of contradictions. Her festivals were the most raucous, the most dangerous, the most irresistible events on Babylon's calendar. If the ziggurat represented stability and the king embodied order, then Ishtar's festivals embodied everything opposite: chaos, passion, rebellion. People called her the Lady of the Evening Star, the torch in the night sky. And on her festival nights, Babylon gave itself permission to burn brightly too. You feel it first in the music. From temple courtyards to city squares, the sound of frame drums and lyres ripple through the dark. The rhythms are not careful, not measured, they are wild, layered, intoxicating. Dancers with loosened hair spin in circles, bronze bangles ringing against their skin. Men and women together chant her names: Inanna, Ishtar, Mistress of Heaven, Queen of Battles. The sound grows louder as more voices join, until it feels less like a song and more like a storm shaking the bricks. The streets overflow. Market stalls, usually filled with grain or dates, are now piled high with garlands of flowers. Jasmine and myrtle hang around necks, perfuming the air. Wine flows freely, poured into clay goblets and shared with strangers. Couples press together, laughing too loudly, their faces flushed red from drink and firelight. Children dart between them, chasing each other with reeds. Even the guards, usually stern and silent, grin tonight, their spears leaned carelessly against walls. At the heart of the city, the festival swells toward Ishtar's temple. Its gates are draped with coloured cloth, red and violet, glowing under torchlight. Priests lead processions through the streets, carrying statues of lions, her sacred animal, on wooden carts. Musicians march ahead, blowing horns, while behind them young women scatter petals across the road. People kneel as the procession passes, but not in silence. They shout prayers, demands even, "Grant us lovers, grant us sons, grant us victory." Ishtar, unlike many gods, does not demand humility. She thrives on rawness, on unrestrained honesty. The rituals themselves are layered in mystery, some of them whispered only in fragments by ancient texts. But what is clear is that these nights blurred the lines between sacred and profane. Temple courtesans, adorned in shimmering veils, performed dances meant to embody the goddess herself, graceful, fierce, impossible to ignore. Men and women sang hymns that praised her for granting pleasure, then immediately praised her for unleashing destruction. The paradox was the point. She was love and war, fertility and fury. To celebrate Ishtar was to embrace contradiction. At certain points, the festival turned even wilder. Some records suggest men dressed in women's clothes, women in men's. Roles bent, boundaries blurred. For one night, Babylonian society loosened its strict hierarchy, allowing space for reversal, release, freedom. Scholars today argue about whether this was symbolic or literal, but as you watch dancers whirl and men with painted eyes strum lyres beside veiled priestesses, you realize Babylon didn't care about scholars. The point was the release itself. Wine keeps flowing. Fires rise higher. Somewhere near the temple steps, a man collapses from drink, only to be hoisted up again by his laughing friends. Another staggers into the arms of a woman, who pulls him into a kiss that lasts too long to be casual. And above it all, the statue of Ishtar gleams under the torchlight, her carved eyes seeming to flash with approval. The crowd roars again, chanting her name until the very bricks seem to hum, "Ishtar, Ishtar, Ishtar." The feasting is lavish. Tables sag beneath roasted lamb, dates drenched in honey, cakes baked with sesame. People eat not with restraint but with abandon. Oil drips down beards, crumbs scatter across the ground. Dogs linger at the edges, snapping at bones tossed their way. The city smells like meat, flowers, smoke, sweat, a heady perfume of indulgence. And yet, beneath the laughter, there's always something sharper. Ishtar is not only the goddess of love, but also of battle. Her hymns praise her as the one who gathers kings like firewood and turns men into women. In the drumbeat, you hear that edge, the reminder that this festival is not only pleasure, but power. Soldiers lift their cups, chanting for victory in the next campaign. Lovers whisper prayers for passion that burns like fire. Mothers press their babies to the ground, asking the goddess to make them strong. The festival is a spell-one binding love to strength, desire to danger. As the night deepens, you wander closer to the temple, where the rituals take on a stranger tone. Priests chant in Sumerian, the older tongue, while pouring libations of milk and wine onto the altar. A young man, stripped to the waist, paints his body with red ochre and dances with a sword, mimicking battle and lovemaking in the same movement. Around him, women raise their voices in a high, piercing cry that cuts through the drums. It is not music. It is release, raw and unfiltered. The sound pierces your chest, vibrating deep inside like a warning and a blessing at once. Somewhere nearby you hear whispers of rites too secret to be shown, of sacred marriages between priest and priestess, reenacting Ishtar's union with her consort Tammuz, binding fertility to the land, of whispered prayers spoken in private chambers, where wine and flesh blurred into sacrament. Whether all of this truly happened, or whether it is rumour amplified through time, no one can say. But what is certain is that the night gave permission for desire, for indulgence, for rebellion, and the people need that. In a world of laws, contracts, strict marriages, and heavy hierarchies, Ishtar's festivals were the necessary storm. A night when one could scream, dance, eat, touch, and believe that even the goddess herself approved. It was excess with purpose, release so that order could return. Near dawn, the chaos begins to ebb. Fires gutter low, drums slow to a tired heartbeat. Couples stagger home laughing and stumbling or disappear into doorways. The flower garlands are crushed underfoot, petals sticking to the mud. The priests return the lion statues to the temple, their eyes bleary but proud, and the city exhales, heavy with smoke and silence. But the memory lingers. The scent of jasmine still clings to your clothes, the rhythm of drums echoes faintly in your bones, and the goddess Ishtar, mistress of contradictions, remains. She is not gone, not even when the sun rises. She lives in the passion that smoulders in the hearts of her people, in their longing for love, in their thirst for victory, in the fire they carry forward into ordinary days. Tomorrow, Babylon will return to its contracts, its scribes, its labourers, its kings. But tonight, in the festival's glow, the city allowed itself to burn, and in that burning you glimpse what truly kept Babylon alive. Not only stone walls or mighty kings, but the wild, uncontainable pulse of its people, set free under the eyes of their goddess. The festival fires fade, the wine-sweet laughter softens, and Babylon exhales into silence. But the silence does not mean safety. In a city of 100,000 souls, darkness is never empty. It conceals not only lovers and priests, but also thieves, whispers of rebellion, and shadows with sharp intentions. And so, as the city sprawls into sleep, another force awakens, the night patrol. Picture them, men in leather jerkins, spears in hand, torches guttering against the wind. Their sandals slap against the baked mud roads. Steady as a metronome, they are the thin thread between order and chaos, assigned to keep watch over Babylon's endless streets. But patrol in this city is never routine. Every night is a wager, and every corner might hide something more dangerous than the last. The first danger is theft. Markets may close at dusk, but the goods remain. Granaries bulge with barley, storehouses hold amphorae of oil, and wealth is stacked in baskets of silver shekels. For the poor, temptation whispers louder than law. A boy darts from an alley, his hands snatching dates from a cart. The patrol shouts, sandals pounding, but he slips into the maze of mud brick walls and vanishes. Is it worth chasing? Some guards shrug. A stolen handful of dates is not worth the bruises of a nighttime pursuit. But let it go too often, and the petty theft grows into bold burglary. Then there are the drunkards. Babylon loves its ale fermented from barley, cloudy and strong, and by midnight, many stumble through the streets with unsteady feet and unfiltered tongues. A patrolman rounds a corner to find two men brawling, fists flying, insults thick as the smoke of their breath. To intervene is risky. One blow, one knife hidden in the belt, and the guard becomes the victim. But to ignore it risks escalation. Sometimes the patrol hauls them to the guardhouse, Sometimes they let them fight until exhaustion wins. Justice at night is not about fairness, it is about survival. And then there are the shadows that do not stumble, do not laugh. Assassins, rivals, men with debts to settle. Babylon is a city of contracts, of promises sealed in clay. Break one, and vengeance follows, often in the quiet of night. A patrol might stumble across two figures locked not in a drunken fight, but in cold, deliberate violence. A dagger glints, a body crumples. The guards shout, but the killer melts into alleys before the torchlight can catch him. The victim groans, bleeding onto dust. Does the patrol chase the murderer or save the dying? Every choice is a gamble. Not all dangers come from men. The city itself conspires against the patrol. The streets are narrow, hemmed in by high walls. Torches sputter in the wind, casting more shadow than light. Dogs bark from rooftops, their eyes flashing like tiny embers. A sudden crash, a clay pot knocked over by a stray cat can feel like an ambush. Every sound sharpens the nerves. The night patrol learns to distrust silence most of all, for silence often hides the worst. Superstition weighs heavily too. Babylonian nights are haunted, not just by thieves but by spirits. The patrol mutters prayers under their breath as they pass dark wells and abandoned doorways, places believed to harbour ghosts. Some guards carry amulets against Lamashtu, others whisper to Pazuzu for protection. To modern ears it sounds like fear of shadows, but to them it is practical insurance. Steel alone cannot fight the unseen, but the greatest danger of all lies in the patrol's own role. They are not just protectors, they are enforcers. Their torches are symbols of the king's eye, burning even in the night, and power, once granted, can turn cruel. Some patrols use the darkness to extort rather than defend. A merchant walking home too late might find himself stopped, accused of imagined crimes, relieved of his purse as penalty. A couple whispering in an alley might be fined for improper conduct unless they pay. For the ordinary Babylonian, the patrol is both shield and predator, savior and threat. Still, without them, chaos would reign. Imagine the city without watchmen, thieves running free through markets, drunken mobs rioting, vendettas spilling into the streets unchecked. The patrol does not prevent every crime, but they make criminals think twice. Their spears are less sharp than their presence, the knowledge that eyes still linger even when the sun is gone. As the night deepens, you follow one such patrol through the city. Their leader, a broad man with a scar across his cheek, carries himself like someone who has seen everything. He stops often, tilting his head, listening to sounds only he seems to hear. "Drunkards," he mutters at one noise, "thieves" at another. Each alley holds a story and he knows them all. At the city gate they find a caravan guard lingering, drunk and belligerent, demanding entry though the gates are sealed until dawn. The patrol stands firm, spears crossed. Voices rise, fists clench, but in the end the guard slumps down against the wall, defeated by exhaustion more than authority. Later, by the riverbank, they discover a group of men gambling by torchlight, their dice clicking against clay. Gambling is not forbidden, but debts are dangerous. Arguments spark, knives appear faster than words. The patrol wades in, torches waving, spears pointed. The gamblers scatter like startled birds, leaving only coins glinting in the dust. And always, the patrol keeps an eye on the shadows above. Rooftops are not empty. Assassins, thieves, even restless lovers move across them like cats. A shout from one guard stops a boy mid-climb, caught trying to reach an upper window. He's dragged down, his excuses pouring out faster than tears. His parents will pay a fine tomorrow, and he will carry the shame for weeks. By the time the stars begin to pale, the patrol is weary. Their torches burn low, their sandals are caked with dust. They return to their guardhouse, leaning spears against walls, trading stories of near misses and close calls. Babylon exhales once more, the chaos of night tucked away as dawn approaches. But the dangers they face do not vanish with the sun. They only wait, gathering again for the next night, the next shadows, the next whispered threat. And you realize, in Babylon, the night is not a pause between days. It is a battlefield of its own, quieter, darker, but just as brutal. And the patrol is not just lawmen. They are gamblers with fate, balancing fear, duty, greed, and courage under the flickering eye of torchlight. Their victories are invisible, their failures etched only in whispers, yet without them, the city would collapse into chaos before the moon had even set. The boy's excuses pour out faster than his breath. He swears he was only climbing to chase a cat, or to see the moon, or to escape the heat of the street. But the patrol leader only narrows his eyes. He has heard every story before. With a barked order, the boy is dragged along, his wrists twisted behind his back, his freedom already slipping away into the dark belly of Babylon's night justice. This is the nature of the patrol: judge, jury, executioner, or sometimes just weary men deciding what trouble is worth their time. And Babylon, vast and restless, supplies them with an endless parade of trouble. Every alley whispers, every courtyard trembles with the possibility of crime. The machinery of night order. The patrol does not exist in isolation. They are the visible arm of a much larger machinery, the king's authority stretched across every corner of the city. By day, scribes record laws on clay tablets, judges pronounce verdicts, and temple priests bless oaths. By night, none of that matters if no one enforces it. The patrol makes law tangible. Each guard knows this power. Their torches glow not just against the wind, but as extensions of royal will. And yet, in that glow lies danger. Authority corrupts quickly when not checked by daylight. Many patrolmen are poor themselves, drawn from the same districts as the thieves they chase. The difference is a spear, a leather jerkin, and the right to intimidate. The temptation to use that right selfishly is enormous. Imagine a merchant, exhausted after counting his silver late into the evening, caught on the street after curfew. A patrol blocks his way. Improper conduct, they say. Suspicious movement. The punishment? A fine. The solution? Hand over a handful of coins and walk away free. To whom does he complain? To no one. By dawn the record is gone, the silver pocketed, and the patrol untouchable. This duality protector and predator defines Babylonian nights. To live under the patrol is to accept both shield and sword pressing at your throat. Fear as a tool. One might think the patrols worked by sheer strength, by dragging criminals into cells. But strength is costly, wounds are permanent, and blood spilled at night stains reputations. More often, their true weapon is fear. Fear keeps men from leaving their houses after dark. Fear makes a boy hesitate before stealing a loaf of bread. Fear convinces gamblers to scatter before dice become daggers. The patrol thrives on whispers. They caught a man last week, flogged him until his back looked like a ploughed field. Or they left a thief hanging outside the gate as a warning. These stories, whether true or exaggerated, do more work than 10 patrolmen. Babylon polices itself under the weight of its own fear. But fear is fragile. Let it slip, and chaos seeps in. If the people believe the patrols are lazy, corrupt, or weak, the balance shatters. Crime multiplies, vendettas spill unchecked, and suddenly the night belongs not to the king, but to the lawless. The patrol knows this, which is why they maintain their theatre of authority with torches high, sandals loud, and voices commanding, even when exhaustion drags at their bones. Encounters with the margins. Babylon's night is full not only of criminals and drunks, but of the forgotten, the ones who do not fit neatly into categories. Take the beggars. They gather near temples, muttering prayers and stretching out hands. By law, the temples should feed them. By practice, not all are fed. Hunger pushes them into the streets at night, seeking scraps near granaries or doorsteps. When the patrol finds them, there is no crime-only desperation. Do they drive them away? Do they beat them for daring to exist outside daylight? The choice lies with each guard. Mercy is rare, cruelty is common, or the women. Babylonian nights are no place for women without escort, yet some walk anyway. Priestesses of Ishtar, wives searching for missing husbands, daughters fetching water. Patrols view them with suspicion. A woman alone at night is too easily branded harlot, her motives too quickly twisted. For some guards, She is an opportunity to demand bribes or favours. For others, she is a shadow to be ignored. Either way, the city itself judges her harshly. And then there are the mad, the ones muttering to invisible gods, wandering barefoot through alleys, hair wild, eyes burning. Babylon does not understand madness. It sees demons in every incoherent word. The patrol approaches them with spears ready, fearing curses or possession. Some are dragged to temples for exorcism, others beaten into silence. For the patrol, madness is as dangerous as theft, for it threatens the fragile illusion of order. The river at night. No account of Babylon's night watch is complete without the Euphrates. The river is the city's lifeblood by day, but by night it becomes a border between law and lawlessness. Boats moored to the docks creak in the dark, their cargo hidden beneath woven mats. Smugglers thrive here, slipping goods past tax collectors under cover of night. Wine, foreign spices, even slaves, all trade flows silently across the water. The patrol knows this, of course. They patrol the banks, torches flickering against the rippling current. But the river swallows evidence quickly. By the time they find footprints, the smugglers are long gone, their profits floating downstream. Sometimes the patrol catches them. A scuffle, a few shouts, and a boat is overturned. Its smugglers dragged ashore. Yet for everyone caught, 10 escape. Some guards even look the other way, their silence purchased by a pouch of coins. To the city, the river remains mysterious, untamable, half ally and half enemy. Ritual and superstition. The deeper the night, the heavier superstition grows. Babylon's gods do not sleep, and neither do its demons. Patrolmen mutter prayers as they pass shrines, pressing clay amulets to their chests. They spit 3 times at crossroads to ward off spirits. They refuse to look into wells, fearing the gaze of ghosts below. Some guards refuse assignments near cemeteries altogether, convinced that restless dead walk at night. Even their torches are more than light. They are talismans, warding off not just thieves, but the unseen. When a torch sputters, a guard's heart leaps, for a dying flame feels like an omen. They relight it quickly, whispering words of protection, convinced that without fire they are naked before the dark. To us, it might sound like foolishness. To them, it was survival. In a city where sickness spread without explanation, where shadows seemed to breathe, where dreams were omens, superstition filled the gaps left by ignorance. The patrol lived in those gaps, straddling the line between man and spirit. Punishments in the dark. What happens when the patrol catches someone? Babylonian justice is harsh, and the night is no gentler than the day. A thief caught with stolen bread might be flogged on the spot, his back striped red before being cast into the dust. A drunkard brawling in the street could be thrown into a cell until morning, his head pounding both from ale and from the guard's blows. A murderer caught with dagger in hand might not see dawn at all, his body left in an alley as warning. But justice is not consistent. It depends on the patrol's mood, their leader's temper, the bribes offered. Babylon had laws written in clay, yes, but at night law was flexible, bending beneath the weight of torchlight and human whim. Dawn approaches. As the hours drag on, the patrol feels the weight of exhaustion. Eyes droop, sandals drag, and tempers fray. The city grows quieter, its dangers thinning as the promise of dawn creeps closer. When the first light of morning glows against the horizon, a transformation begins. Shadows recede, dogs grow silent, and the Euphrates glimmers with gold. Merchants rise to prepare stalls, priests wash their hands for rituals, and families stir from slumber. The patrol, weary and dirt-streaked, trudges back toward their barracks. Some carry bruises, some carry stolen coins, some carry only stories. But all carry the knowledge that they kept Babylon balanced on the knife's edge between chaos and order for another night, and tomorrow they will do it again. Reflection. In truth, the Babylonian night patrol was less about catching criminals and more about performance, about making the city believe that power never slept. The king's gaze extended even into darkness, his authority burning in the form of torches carried by ordinary men. But beneath that performance lay a fragile reality. The patrol was overworked, underpaid, and easily corrupted. Their presence brought both safety and fear, order and abuse. They were a reminder that in Babylon, as in all empires, law was never an abstract code, but a living, breathing force, carried on the shoulders of men with spears and fire. And so, when you think of Babylon, do not picture only its ziggurats, its hanging gardens, its golden processions. Picture also its nights, narrow alleys, whispering shadows, and weary men walking with torches, holding chaos at bay until the sun returned. For in those hours, Babylon revealed its truest self, not just as a city of gods and kings, but as a city of fear, survival, and fragile order in the dark.